Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Kinda Murdery, a true crime podcast that's mostly about murder, and always about the strange and compelling stories that arise when the path less traveled twists to darkness, and those who walk its shadows surrender to violence and moral corruption. We have a perilous journey ahead, so thank you for lending me your courage and good company. I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this is Kinda Murdery, coming to you freshly pressed and piping hot from rainy San Diego, California. You know, just the other day, my daughter Daisy told me about a viral TikTok craze that some of you may have heard of. It's happening now, the dancing Serbian woman. If you don't know what I'm talking about, and don't feel bad because neither did I until 2 days ago, the dancing Serbian woman is a real-life urban legend like Slender Man or Momo, a sort of flesh and blood boogie woman. Actually funny to call her a boogie woman because she dances. So here's the deal. There's this woman, allegedly, in Serbia. She's dressed basically in black and white stripes, a long skirt, a cardigan, and a babushka headscarf. And you might see her standing on a street corner with her arms in a T, like someone being crucified, for lack of a better way to describe it. And she does this shuffling dance step with her back to you and her arms out. If you see her, make sure she doesn't notice you because she has a knife, and if she does notice you, she will immediately sprint at you, and if you can't evade her, which you probably can't because you'll be surprised, she will stab you to death with the knife. Seeing you see her is the only provocation she requires to murder. Alternatively, some people say she'll kill you if you refuse to dance with her, but according to most of what I've come across, seeing you at all is the only sin required for the dancing Serbian woman to immediately resort to sprinting, swift, and brutal butcher knife murder. Now, these videos are all over TikTok, and they range from obviously a couple kids pulling a prank, or sad middle-aged men pulling a prank, to so real that it's downright bone-chilling. These videos scared the bejesus out of Daisy, and she described them to me as a, quote, real-life creepypasta, unquote, which is on point. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we've canceled our upcoming spring break trip to Serbia. I kid. Please, visit the beautiful country of Serbia. I don't want their tourism board coming after me. But my point is, when I first sat down to research this episode, I, out of pure fatherly curiosity, did a Google search for dancing Serbian woman. Check out the Kinda Murdery TikTok account at Kinda Murdery if you'd like to watch the dancing Serbian woman video. I'll also post a link to it in the show notes. So when I searched for dancing Serbian woman, that led me to the story of the Witch of Vladomirovac. I'll post pictures of her to social media as well. She was a real-life person who dressed exactly like a Halloween witch, which leads me to believe that Eastern Europe is responsible for some of our most enduring horror myths. I mean, that's not the only thing that leads me to believe that. We've got Count Dracula, werewolves, etc., etc. I'm getting off point here. But check out at Kinda Murdery on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, and you will see pictures of the Witch of Vladomirovac. Particular appreciation goes to weird-history-facts.com for helping me put this episode together. As always, my sources are in the show notes. Now, the Witch of Vladomirovac was a real person. There's no question about it. She's in the newspaper. She's in court records. Unlike the dancing lady of Serbia, there is no urban legend here. She was a real person who lived in the latter part of the 1930s in the former kingdom of Yugoslavia. And she was, with all likelihood, the oldest serial killer in human history, and she may, in fact, have been one of history's most prolific, possibly even the most prolific serial killer ever, racking up a kill count of at least 50, and possibly as many as 150 victims, despite doing much of her killing between the ages of 70 and 92. And, in the course of all that murder, she accumulated a purportedly vast, and I mean vast, fortune. So, to any ageists out there, you're wrong. Obviously, there are so many things an elderly person can do even better than a youngster, and apparently, serial murder is one of them. And if any of that piques your interest, then I suggest that you put your personal items underneath the seat in front of you. Stow your carry-on in the overhead compartment. Let go of the worries of the day, but be sure your seatbelt is fastened. There's turbulence expected ahead. Kinda Murderies, The Witch of Vladomirovac, Satanic Pacts, and the impressive kill count of Baba Anuchka starts now. She was known by many names: the Banat Witch, the Witch of Vladomirovac, Little Mother Anuchka, Anna Pistova, Anuchka de Pashtanja, Anyuka D, or Anyuka di Pistonia, all depending on the English translations of her Serbo-Croatian name. But she was born Anna Draxin, or Draxin, if you prefer the anglicized version, but she was commonly known by all as Baba Anuchka, which translates to Grandmother Annie. And for reasons I can't explain, for some reason to me, and perhaps it's simply because it's in my native language, but Grandmother Annie, for all its banality, is the most terrifying name of all. Behind the facade of the sweet old lady, there lurked a terrible secret. Baba Anuchka was the first and the most prolific of the former Yugoslavia's serial killers, and she was probably also among the world's most prolific. She may have even been the most prolific, full stop. Although her greatest notoriety came after almost a century of walking this earth, let's take a moment to talk about Anna Draxin's early life. Anna was born in 1838, 1836 according to her own testimony, although on trial for murder in her 90s, she clearly had a vested interest in being even older than she was, so let's go with 1838. She was born in 1838 in Romania to a rich cattleman's family. The family moved to a small town named Vladomirovac, currently in Serbia, in 1849. I say currently in Serbia because, at the time, Vladomirovac was part of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Anna went to private school in Pančevo, mixing with children from other rich families, a luxury that was not afforded to many other women at the time. She studied chemistry and spoke 5 languages. So clearly we're dealing with a woman of impressive intellect here. At the age of 20, Anna fell in love with an Austrian military officer that broke her heart and gave her syphilis. Given that many of her victims later in life were men who were purported to be abusive or at least extremely unpleasant by Anna's accomplices, usually the men's wives, it's possible that being heartbroken and infected with syphilis at such a young age by a cad of an Austrian military officer was the origin story of Baba Anuchka, the serial killer. Either way, it seems that this tragic turn in her young life clearly played a part in both making Anna into a misanthrope and inspiring her to devote her life and time to the study of medicine and chemistry, likely to cure herself of syphilis at first and then later because she excelled at it. An Eastern European woman who spoke 5 languages and taught herself chemistry in 1858. I think it's fairly clear that we're dealing with a genius-level intellect here. So at age 20, she was heartbroken and pox-infected by the Austrian military officer, but she apparently found a way to cure herself and years later would go on to marry a much older man, a landowner by the name of Pistov, and thus she became Anna di Pistonia, which not only rhymes, but I believe translates to Anna, the wife of Pistov. And if pissed off is at all an accurate pronunciation of that surname, well then Anna certainly was, but we hope that's not foreshadowing that her new husband would turn out to be a furious brute with anger management issues. And indeed, it seems that he was not. The marriage was, by all accounts, a happy one. Anna bore 11 children, but only one of them survived to adulthood. My God, that's an impressive amount of tragedy there. The son who did survive would become a successful merchant in Vladomirovac. More on that later. Anna's husband died after 20 years of marriage, and she continued to pursue her studies of chemistry. The freedoms of widowhood, combined with her genius-level big brain, led Baba Anuchka to become an accomplished herbalist and chemist, and she had a reputation as a healer, or as a witch, according to different accounts. Now, to be fair to Anna, it was common at that time in human history for any woman with 2 nickels to rub together and an education, or even just autonomy, to be accused of witchcraft. That said, witch was a professional image that Anna very much cultivated intentionally. Also, it should be said that witchcraft was a trade that was not uncommon in Yugoslavia at the time, when witch doctors had legally registered shops and paid taxes for explicitly practicing witchcraft. So, in Yugoslavia in the 1800s and even the early 1900s, the title of witch did not carry the same inherent evil that it does in American culture and folklore. It's worth noting that Anna's son, the successful merchant, kept an accounting book with the names of all of Anna's customers. And given that Anna's principal business would eventually become murder, it seems fairly safe to assume that this accounting book was in fact a lucrative blackmail file. But for many decades, Anna's identity as a serial murderer was hidden from light, and perhaps it took many decades to develop, although the historical record suggests that she didn't waste much time getting down to killing. For over 50 years, Baba Anuchka sold a mixture of concoctions and medicines that she made in her lab. Some of them were love potions, and some were known as magic water, or in some cases, the devil's water, or bitter water, Bijana vodka. That's my terrible attempt at Yugoslavian there. Bijana vodka, bitter water. Some of these potions she sold to soldiers, and the potion would make them ill enough to escape the military service. But her specialty was magical water, or love potions, and these contained small quantities of plant toxins mixed with mercury and arsenic. They were especially popular with married women who had problems at home. Clearly, Baba Anuchka was not without a sense of humorous irony, given that her love potions were in fact used to poison men rather than cause them to fall in love. When a woman came to Baba Anuchka for one of her potions, the witch would ask her clients things along the lines of, how heavy or how big is the problem? Which really meant, how heavy is the person, or how much does he weigh? Based on this information, she would prepare her magical water and was able to predict with a surprising degree of accuracy the day when the person for whom her water was intended would die. According to the confessions of Baba Anuchka's many confederates, the person for whom the potion was prepared would die in the greatest of agony. And the fact that she always dosed the amount of poison exactly according to the body weight of the person for whom it was intended speaks volumes about her skill in poisoning. According to witness accounts, there was also a magic ritual involved in the process before she could hand over the magical water. Her clients were tasked with bringing 1 black hen and 1 white hen, a bag of ashes, trisha, which is another name for wild arugula or wall rocket, basil, and incense. In the mysterious silence of her dark room and in the smoke of the incense, she would scatter the ashes around her, whispering some arcane and enigmatic words. In the end, she would prepare a bottle filled with clean water. Finally, she would take a small bell and ring it 3 times. This would signify that the deal with the devil was done. Baba Anuchka charged her clients between 2,000 and 10,000 Yugoslav dinars, which was a lot of money at the time. In fact, still a lot of money now. In 1929, when Grandmother Annie was finally put on trial for murder, a single dinar was worth about 1.76 cents, which means she was charging between $35 and $176 for her murder potions. And she killed between 50 and 150 people. She also reportedly sold herbal remedies, charms, talismans, and abortion elixirs for unwanted pregnancies. But if we look just at her income off of murder potions, at the low end, if she killed 50 people and charged $35 a person, she made $1,750. At the high end, if she killed 150 people and charged $176 a person, then she made $26,400. And her poisoning career likely began sometime after the death of her husband in the 1880s. $26,400 in 1880 is the equivalent of $774,000 today. In 1929, it's the equivalent of $462,000. But remember, that's just the murder money. She had various other income streams. In fact, it seems very nearly accurate to call Baba Anushka the original Martha Stewart of witch murder. She had many accomplices, especially the families and wives of her victims, since they themselves ordered the deaths of their loved ones, and generally refused investigations and autopsies, so the deaths remained a mystery. And remember, talking about the wealth that Baba Anushka generated, she made all that money just off the potions themselves, and meanwhile, her son kept records of every client. So, while there's no historical proof or evidence for this, I think it's a fairly safe assumption that she made a lot of money off of blackmail as well. Or perhaps he did, and could have even if his mother's own code forbade it. Perhaps blackmail was the foundation of his success as a merchant, and there's support for that as well, at least for the likelihood of it. By 1920, Baba Anushka's 2 potions, that's one that just made you violently ill in order to get out of things like military service, and the other that actually murdered, her 2 potions became so popular that by 1920, Grandmother Annie hired an actual agent. Can you believe that? A murder agent named Lubina Malenkov, who helped to locate clients and get them to the witch's house. Lubina and her associates would travel around the Banat region, visit villages, and look for places where there was discord and disease. They would then recommend Baba Anushka's devil water that could solve all of the villagers' problems. They were literally traveling murder salesmen. Word spread across Banat to the farthest corners of the region, and people came from all over for advice. Anushka treated people for insanity, dementia, and other ailments. And, no matter what her assessment, she always looked to extract as much money as possible from her clientele. Other than Lubina Malenkov, some of Anushka's other accomplices include Danica Stoyk, Olga Sturza, the couple Sima and Sofia Mamarov, who were later accused of poisoning Nikola Mamarov and his 16-year-old granddaughter. As I mentioned earlier when discussing the wealth she accumulated, Baba Anushka is said to have killed between 50 and 150 people, mostly men. Eventually, the police from Pozarovec received an anonymous letter accusing her of various crimes. She was first arrested in 1914. This would have been after likely 35 some odd years of murder. She was arrested in 1914, but she was acquitted. She would be arrested again on May 15, 1928, at the age of 90, and it was this arrest that would lead to her trial. Baba Anushka seemed to believe that she was not doing any bad deed, but rather simply helping people in need. She claimed that she knew medicine better than any doctor and that every medicine she gave helped, saying, "I am a benefactor to the poor and ignorant world." Following her arrest in 1928, the crown prosecutor in the small Yugoslavian town of Pachevo, in the then Kingdom of Yugoslavia, would officially disagree. And I'd ask you to please rejoin me this Thursday for part 2 of Kinda Murdery's The Witch of Vladomirovac, Satanic Pacts, and the impressive kill count of Baba Anushka, where we'll cover Grandmother Annie's very public and sensational murder trial. Now, before I go, I want to remind you, as I often nearly always do, of the free 3-digit lifeline number 988 that you can call for free anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to receive immediate counseling for substance use, mental health, or suicidal thoughts. So if you find yourself in crisis, please do call 988. Program it into your phone right now. Get the help you need. And please always do remember that the world is a better place with you in it. You are loved, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Now, if you aren't in crisis and you'd just like to connect with someone, don't hesitate to reach out to me, kindamurdery@gmail.com, @kindamurdery on all social media. You can also call the Kinda Murdery hotline, 888-MURDERY. That's 888-687-3379, or 888-MURDER, the letter Y. And everybody, please do call Kinda Murdery and tell me your Kinda Murdery story, which doesn't have to actually be about murder. Tell me your Kinda Murdery story so that I can share it with the community and use it to inspire an episode of Kinda Murdery. Also, as you know, I have cerebral palsy, and if you are a disabled person and would like to share a story about your particular life and challenges, I'd love to hear that. And you don't have to be disabled. Really, anybody with a unique life and set of challenges, which really we all have, I invite you all to share your stories so that I can share them with the community. Because, again, as I very often, nearly always say, it's my belief that by sharing our stories, by sharing with others life experiences that they may not consider, that may seem very foreign to them. Wow, did you hear my voice crack there? That was something else. I'm 11 years old again, everybody. But by sharing our unique experiences, we can all become a little more real, a little more human to each other, and hopefully we can build empathy that way, which is something the world desperately needs. So please do share your stories however you like, kindofmurdery@gmail.com, @kindofmurdery on all social media, or you can call the Kind of Murdery hotline, 888-MURDERY, and tell me about what you're going through. And or also, please, tell me your Kind of Murdery story. I want to share it. And with that, thanks for being here. I'll see you Thursday. I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kind of Murdery. This is part 2 of The Witch of Vladomirovac, and it starts now. Baba Anuzka's first trial was in June of 1914 in Bela Crkva for providing poison for murders, but she was swiftly acquitted. She was arrested again 14 years later on May 15, 1928, at the age of 90. Several women were arrested as well and charged with the murders of 2 men, Nikola Mamarov and Lazar Ladosky. As for the Witch of Vladomirovac, she was charged as an accessory. The women charged with the actual murders were Stana, Sofia, and Sima Mamarov, Lubina Milenkov, Danica Stoyik, and Olga Sturza. Authorities exhumed the bodies of Nikola Mamarov and Lazar Ladosky, and autopsies were performed at the University of Belgrade. The trial began on June 29th at the District Court in Pachevo, and the hearings took place on the 18th and 19th of June. As part of evidence discovery, chemical testing was done on samples found in Anuzka's house, and the trial was then continued until July 1st when the results of that chemical testing were available. The prosecutors sought the death penalty for all defendants except for Olga Sturza, who was a minor at the time of the murders, but he still sought a lengthy prison sentence for her. Sofia and Sima Mamarov defended themselves at the trial. They claimed that they did not know that the magic water contained poison and that they believed it was just water, and that death came as a result of Anuzka's supernatural powers. Stana claimed that she only wanted the magic water to heal her husband from alcoholism and that she was not aware it would kill him. During the trial, Anuzka constantly denied charges, claiming that she never sold any magic water and that the whole case against her was fabricated by Lubina Malenkov, who wanted to blame Anuzka for her own crimes. Sturza defended herself, claiming that she was still a child at the time of the murder and that she was not aware that the water would kill her grandfather. But Sofia Mamarov testified that Sturza was well aware of the entire plot, and a doctor named Branko Verdelia testified that traces of arsenic were found in the bodies of both victims. I want to pause the account right here for a moment and point out an almost bizarre distinction being made in the defense of the women who are accused of murder here. The Mamarovs say that they did not know that the magic water contained poison, that they believed that it was just magic water, and that the deaths that happened were the result of Anuzka's supernatural powers. So essentially they're saying, oh, we didn't poison our grandfather, our husband. We didn't contract with a witch to poison him. We simply contracted with a witch to kill him through magic and satanic pacts. Now, I do think that would be a worthy distinction to make, certainly in an American court of law, given people's attitudes towards magic. But on the flip side, in Yugoslavia at the time, as I mentioned in the last episode, witch doctors were actually licensed practitioners, which means that many people, if not most people, actually believed magic was real. In which case, if you contract with a witch to poison someone versus contracting with a witch to kill them through magic, if magic is as real as poison, then aren't you equally guilty either way? I guess we'll leave the answer to that to the former Kingdom of Yugoslavia legal scholars. But now, I want to jump into some contemporaneous accounts from Yugoslavian newspapers in the 1920s that outline not only the actual action at Baba Anuchka's trial, but also the events and circumstances surrounding it. The context, if you will. All right, here we go. This is from June 11th, 1929. In the criminal court of the small town of Pachevo today, one of the most deadly and prolific poison blender trials in modern criminal history began. In addition to the main defendant, 92-year-old Anna Pistova, who was born in Vojvodina under the name of Baba Anuchka, several women from the most prestigious families, including the widow of the mayor of Banatsko Novo Selo, Dr. Costa Karina, were indicted and accused of being responsible for both the incitement and for providing help for the poisoning of the victims. In recent years being the 1920s, many mysterious deaths accumulated in Vojvodina. Always the victims were men. Among them were many who were in the prime of life and enjoyed excellent health, but died suddenly. 2 years ago, in 1927, the mysterious death of a rich restaurateur named Geibel caused general consternation in Vladomirovac, and similar mysterious deaths occurred in Pančevo, Novo Selo, and in other places of the Bačka region. At the end of 1928, Mayor Karina of Novo Selo returned home from a session of the municipal council and suddenly died. Only then did authorities pay attention to the accumulation of strange deaths. The victims of the investigation led investigators to Baba Anuchka, who lived in a miserable hut at the entrance to Vladomirovac and was available for her miraculous medicines. The state attorney issued a detention order against the old woman, but the local police did not dare to arrest her because Baba Anuchka was known far and wide as a benefactor of the people. The locals spoke her name with awe and told themselves one after the other that she had healed many people. Indeed, she had brought the dead back to life and cured sick cattle. Finally, in the deep silence of the night, the police took the old woman away and delivered her to Pančevo prison, so that the judicial investigation could take its course undisturbed. Shortly after Christmas, 6 more arrests were made. In February, there was a big sensation, the arrest of the young widow of the mayor of Karina. The investigation revealed that Baba Anuchka had run a veritable poisoner's workshop, and that women from near and far made pilgrimages for her venomous poison so that they could put their inconvenient husbands away. The still sprightly, spirited, and fresh old woman, Baba Anuchka, confessed that certain women and girls who, as she said, in their anguish had turned to her, received from her herbs and spices for the preparation of love potions. The women had complained to her that their husbands were unfaithful or neglectful, so she gave them the love potions to help with those problems. But she could not help the fact that the women made too much use of the love potions, so much so that the men then became deathly ill. The same exact excuse was used by the women who were accused of murdering their spouses. Although they admitted to having given the love potion to their husbands, they claimed that they had no intention other than to win the men's love again. Such was the case with the wife of the mayor of Karina. But with her having been educated in a boarding school in Lausanne, it's highly unlikely that she believed in love potions. Believing in poison, on the other hand, requires no such flight of fancy. The mayor's wife, a beautiful and lettered woman of 29, had been married to Mayor Karina for 10 years. She'd accepted the marriage against her will by the wish of her parents, and there had never been a good relationship between her and her husband, who at the time was 20 years old. The public prosecutor's office had the bodies of the mayor and 10 other men exhumed. The remains were sent to the Chemical Institute at the University of Belgrade, and in almost every case, death was determined to be the result of organic plant poison. There are numerous pieces of new evidence presented against the witch of Vladomirovac that still need to be reviewed. So that was an account of the trial taken from June 11th, 1925. We're now going to skip forward 10 days and continue with the trial of the witch of Vladomirovac. As Baba Anuchka was rushed by a jailer between a cordon of mounted police and into the courthouse, newspaper photographers were awaiting her appearance. She became wild, clasped her hand over her face, and shouted, "Why photograph me? Am I a wonder of the world?" The first witness at trial today was a woman named Maria David, who testified that she'd been a servant of the witch for 20 years. The prosecutor asked, did your mistress give away potions for money? Replied Miss David, why yes, of course. Often ladies and gentlemen came in carriages and in cars from Pančevo and Belgrade. David went on to say that the hocus pocus that the witch used with her clients was the reason that she had been called upon to testify. And if you would like to hear more of that testimony, as well as more about the former Kingdom of Yugoslavia's trial of the century, and find out just what happened to Baba Anushka, then please do rejoin me this Sunday, March 5th, for Part 3, the thrilling conclusion of The Witch of Vladomirovac, Satanic Pacts, and the impressive kill count of Baba Anushka. Now before I let you go, please let me entreat you, call 888-MURDERY, that's 888-687-3379, and tell me your Kinda Murdery story so that I can use it on the show. And please remember about the free 3-digit lifeline number that you can call at no cost, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 988. You can call 988 to receive immediate counseling for substance use, mental health, or suicidal thoughts. So if you find yourself in crisis, please do call 988. Program it into your phone now. And please always remember that you are loved, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, and the world is a better place with you in it. Now, if you're not in crisis, and you'd just like to connect with someone, please do feel free to reach out to me, kindamurdery@gmail.com, at kindamurdery on all social media, or of course you can call 888-MURDERY, but I want you to call 888-MURDERY primarily to tell me your personal Kinda Murdery stories. And please also remember that I'm not qualified to help you if you're in acute crisis, so please don't reach out to me in that case. Call 988. But if you'd just like to share your story, if you'd just like to connect with someone, if you'd just like to talk about the unique challenges that you face in life, if you'd just like to give all of us a chance to better understand who you are so that we can all become just a little more empathetic, then please do reach out to me in all the ways just described. Your choice. I'm here, I care, and I would love to connect with you. All right, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday for the thrilling conclusion of The Witch of Vladomirovac. I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery. Kinda Murderies, The Witch of Vladomirovac, Satanic Pacts, and the impressive kill count of Baba Anushka, Part 3, starts now. The prosecutor immediately asked Maria about Baba Anushka's potions. Did Baba prepare magic potions, Miss David, against unwanted childbirth? David replied, well, indeed, but they did not help. Those gathered at the proceedings showed obvious relief at this answer. Said Maria David, the girls and the women came and then cried and complained that they had not been given magic powder but just plain old dust. Baba demanded 100 to 200 dinars for such purchases. On this testimony, the state prosecution also accused Baba Anushka of fraud. The defendant answered his accusation with a loud curse. Theatrically and with much drama, Commune Mayor Vojasudin went ahead and told that soon after the death of Nikola Mamarov, there was ample evidence that he was murdered. In the whole region, it was known and said by all that you could buy poison from Baba Anushka. At these words, Baba Anushka jumped up and challenged the witness. Now, the witness was a gigantic, sturdy farmer, and the old woman's height was barely up to his chest, but she shoved back the judicial soldiers and screamed, "You're lying, you devil thief!" When the prosecutor asked for the witness's testimony, Baba rushed the court bench in front of the courtroom, grabbed the hands of the presiding judge, and shouted, "Permit him to go to hell!" When the court administered the oath to the witness, the witch disturbed the proceedings with constant shouts of, "Go to hell, you devil's brood!" Then the public prosecutor called Dr. Branko Verdelia, who'd carried out the autopsy on the body of the 70-year-old Nikola Mamarov. Dr. Verdelia stated that the old man had been poisoned by arsenic and that the magic potion given him by his granddaughter was nothing more than a strong arsenic solution. The court custodian showed Baba Anushka a vial that stood in front of the court table and was filled with a milky liquid. He asked, "Did you, Baba Anushka, sell this bottle to Sofia Mamarov?" Baba Anushka replied, "I know nothing. Maybe it's the foot medicine I gave to Stana." Said the prosecutor, "You've forgotten everything?" "Oh my God," wailed the old woman. "I hear so poorly, I do not understand what the witnesses say." She took her headscarf off and held her hand to her ear and said over and over again, "It seems to me that I have become deaf." "So far you've heard everything just fine," replied the prosecutor, "but it appears that you cannot hear unpleasant things, things that you don't want to hear." The crowd in the courtroom laughed at this. Later, during a break in the proceedings, a newspaper reporter requested permission to speak to Baba Anuchka in her cell. He showed her drawings and photographs made in the courtroom during her trial. Baba Anuchka looked at the pictures for a long time. Then she moved to the mirror and said, "Am I really that old and ugly? You know, that's only because I have no teeth. The teeth I got in prison are bad, and they do not fit. That dentist was a bastard. But if I had good dentures in my mouth, I would be more beautiful and I could marry again." When asked what she thought about the probable outcome of her trial, Baba Anuchka replied to the question with a sincere wink and said, "I do not believe that I will soon go home. The judges will give me 2 years, although I am quite innocent." She then requested that the reporter please not write anything bad about her. As the trial resumed, it was difficult even for the prosecutor to make sense of things because all of the witnesses and defendants testified against one another and accused each other severely. Anuchka remained joyful and dismissive because she was convinced that, due to her old age, she could only be condemned to a brief sentence. Occasionally she is called to testify, and then she speaks at length or refuses to answer and spews devil's curses. Mamarov's murderous granddaughter, now 18 years old, testifies that the potion she purchased was for her mother's health. And as mentioned at the outset, Maria David, who had worked for Baba Anuchka for 20 years, reiterated that men and women often appeared in elegant cars from Panskova to demand potions for the elderly. Pausing the trial here for a moment, I wanted to bring up something that I mentioned as a strong possibility in episode 1 of this story, which is the likelihood that either Baba Anuchka or her son, or both working together, were in fact using these poisonings not only to extract money for the potions and the murders, but to then blackmail the people to whom they had provided the deadly drafts. You see, in 1929, very, very few people had motor cars, especially elegant motor cars. And the fact that obviously wealthy men and women were driving their fancy automobiles to the witch's hovel themselves instead of sending a servant with a likely story to procure what they needed suggests to me that these powerful people felt compelled to appear in person, and that reeks of blackmail. Okay, back to the trial. The prosecutor indicted only 10 cases, those where peasant women took the poison from Baba Anuchka and confessed that they were trying to get their husbands out of the way. It wasn't only women. There was one peasant man who had poisoned his wife, co-accused with the others. At the original plea hearing, the magistrate had asked the 92-year-old witch whether she pled guilty, and she jumped up and shouted, "I am completely innocent. Everything is a lie. I am 92 years old, and I have experienced many evil things. But such a vulgar complaint as that which this gentleman accuses me of." She turned a withering eye on the prosecutor. "Why, that is absolutely unthinkable." Later on the witness stand, Baba Anuchka told her life story. Now, some of this you've heard before in episode 1 of this story, but it's worth revisiting quickly in the old woman's testimony. She was the daughter of a wealthy Romanian trader, that's trader with a D, not traitor with a T, who settled in Banat. She attended a private school in Pančova in the middle 1800s with children from aristocratic houses, and then lived with her father. When she was 20, she was seduced by an Austrian officer and fell ill with syphilis. At the time, she went completely into solitude and devoted herself to scholarly reading, mainly medical literature. Her father arranged her marriage to a rich peasant named Pistov in Vladomirovac, and their 20-year marriage turned out to be happy. As we mentioned before, 10 of Baba Anuchka's 11 children tragically did not make it to adulthood, and her one son became a wealthy merchant. After her husband died, she turned a wing of her house into a chemical laboratory. When asked her reason for setting up this alchemist's workshop, she replied that it was just for fun. Baba Anuchka had one servant, a single maid, who was mentally disabled and mute. Gee, it's not suspicious at all when your only servant is intellectually impaired and unable to speak. All of this occurred over 40 years before Baba Anuchka's trial, and even then, her reputation as a healer and an herbalist had already spread far and wide. "Mr. President, I've always had a good memory," declared Baba Anuchka cheerfully on the witness stand. "I also know history and the national customs and political events of our region. I am an expert. Everyone knows that." She was almost giddy as she said this, and then suddenly turned angry as the audience laughed, doubting her acumen. "You laugh," she said, "but all the great gentlemen have come to me for advice. Ministers, deputy generals, envoys from the king." Again, although I don't doubt Baba Anushka's wisdom, to me this also suggests a high probability that Baba Anushka blackmailed the wealthy and powerful after helping them to commit murders. And on that subject of blackmail, given that she made up to $800-something thousand in today's purchasing power selling her murder sickness and apparently ineffective abortion potions, and given that she may very well have been blackmailing the nation's most wealthy and powerful people, not to mention that she carried on her successful poisoning, witch doctoring, and probable blackmailing business for more than half a century, I can't help but wonder what became of all of Baba Anushka's wealth. Where is the Witch of Vladomirovac's treasure? Was it given to her one surviving child? Is that why he was such a successful merchant? Was it buried somewhere? Who knows? What I do know is that I personally have no interest in searching for the treasure of the Witch of Vladomirovac, as I'm virtually certain, if it does exist, it's cursed, and woe be to them that finds it. For a little additional historical context, it's also worth noting here that for centuries of human history, and in particular, in fact, during the witch hunting and witch trials in the United States of America, it was quite common for a single woman with some education and, more to the point, some property that she controlled on her own, which often in those days meant she was a widow, to be accused of being a witch and burned at the stake because some man wanted to get his hands on her money or property, and just the fact that she was educated and or old and alone, in other words, lived outside of the structure of established society, was more than ample evidence that she was a witch. And although Baba Anushka's serial murdering poisoner escapades seem to be corroborated by many witnesses, I can't help but note that she checks all the standard boxes for an unjustified witch hunt.
Find the witch, may we burn her? Burn her! Who of you knows she is a witch? She looks like one!
You'll have to forgive me, but in my humble opinion, there's never a bad time to shoehorn a little classic Monty Python into anything you're doing. And of course, it must be said that in Baba Anushka's case, she was not falsely accused of being a witch. She was, in fact, explicitly a witch. But witches were legal and licensed by the crown in Yugoslavia at the time. So the question really is, for this explicit witch, was her version of a witch hunt not the accusation of witchery, but rather the fact that she was prosecuted as a murderess when perhaps she was just selling harmless potions, and that prosecution was motivated by somehow wanting to get at her property or wealth. Again, it seems like here the answer is no. Her murders were very well documented and assisted by any number of accomplices. However, again, I couldn't go without noting that she does, in fact, check all those standard boxes for unjustified witch persecution. On July 15th, 1929, the District Court of Pachova reached a verdict in the case of Baba Anushka, the witch of Vladomirovac. The 92-year-old woman was sentenced to 15 years in prison for assassinating 70-year-old Nikola Mamarov. The murdered man's 44-year-old wife, Stana Mamarov, was given a life sentence. His son, Lazar Mamarov, was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and his daughter-in-law, 39-year-old Sofia Mamarov, the wife of Lazar, was given 16 years both for participation in abortion as well as the murder of Nikola. As for underage at the time of the murder, but 18 at the time of the trial, Lazar and Sofia's daughter, Olga Sturga, received 8 years in prison as an accomplice to her grandfather's murder. Wow. So either this entire family really hated Grandpa, or some sinister Moriarty wanted to take out the entire Mamarov clan and Baba Anushka all in one fell swoop. During the sentencing I've just described, dramatic scenes took place. At first, Baba Anushka listened to the sentencing as though it were nonsensical. Then she slowly began to understand that she'd been sentenced to 15 years in prison. She rushed to the court, arms raised high, and shouted, "But I'm an innocent old woman! Where is the rumble?" Stana Mamarov and the other women despaired of their severe punishment. Crying and struggling, they tried to interrupt the sentence reading. Stana's lawyer attempted to calm his client to no avail. The prosecutor then pointed out that Baba Anushka would still be held responsible for 6 other poison killings, including the poisoning of the innkeeper Geibel and the attempted poisoning of Mrs. Luba de Lickledek, who killed her husband Peter with one of the witch's poison potions, and who Baba Anuchka had tried to eliminate before de Lickledek could testify against her. When the verdict against her, 15 years imprisonment, was finished being read, Baba Anushka did not rail and curse. She seemed calm and resigned, saying simply, "I have only tried to help poor people, have given good advice and valuable medicines, but never poison. The king will know that I am innocent." The various defense attorneys for the convicted and sentenced parties all filed appeals, to no avail. The prosecutor announced that he was reserving the power to try Baba Anuchka for the other 6 murder cases, and that he would be applying for the death penalty in those. News of the verdict against the witch of Vladomirovac spread like wildfire throughout the country, causing much outrage, especially in Wawodina, the home village of Baba Anuchka. Farmers came from faraway cities to witness the verdict being read, and there was much indignation and fury over the condemnation of Baba Anuchka, who was generally considered by the common people to be a benefactor and person of great wisdom. Baba Anuchka would spend 8 years in prison before being released on compassionate grounds due to her old age. She died in 1938 from senile dementia at 100 years old. And, in the words of the late great Paul Harvey, now you know the rest of the story. Before I let you go, let me quickly remind you, as I usually, often, nearly always do, of the free 3-digit, 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week Lifeline number 988 that you can call to receive immediate counseling for substance use, mental health, or suicidal thoughts. So please program it into your phone, 988, and if you find yourself in crisis, don't hesitate to call to get the help that you need. And please, always do remember that the world is a better place with you in it. If you'd like to connect with me, you can reach out to me at kindofmurdery@gmail.com, at kindofmurdery on all social media. I'm here, I care, and I would love to connect with you. And also, again, please do call 888-MURDERY. That's 888-687-3379 or 888-MURDER, the letter Y, and tell me your Kind of Murdery story. Let the strange events from your own life inspire an episode of the show. And with that, I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kind of Murdery.